creating portraits of people, you have to really take into consideration all the different features and exactly what it is that's going on in there. Things like noses. Everybody has a different type of nose, and how you depict that nose is going to really capture the character of that person. So I'm going to create a nose for you here so you can see some of the steps that went into it. I'm going to zoom in right here to this little area right here. Zoom in on this one guy right there. This guy we're going to create. Now the actual file for him right there, there's the actual file, and we're going to create this nose. Now I've gone ahead and selected the color of the skin here so we can start right off with that. So right here I have the paths that are for the basic head and nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those paths and fill them in separate layers. So right here I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to call it head and fill it. Then I'm going to select the path for the nose, and in a separate layer, I'll call it nose. I'll fill the path again. Then there's the nostril right there. So I'm going to select a third layer, which we'll call nostril. And we'll pick a much darker version of this skin tone and fill that path in that layer. So there we have the basic shapes that are going to make up this nose. So let's come in closer. Now, right now, the hard edges and this little curvature here is due to the fact that there's a little refraction behind his glasses. But I'm going to go in here and start adding definition to this nose. Now, to do that, I'm simply going to use my dodge and burn tools. So I'm going to take my burn tool here, and I'm going to go along the edges of this nose. I have a low exposure rate set. So I'm going to go in here, let's select the layer with the nose right there. I'm just going to kind of darken that tone right through there, and then the bottom of the nose. And I'm going to follow the shape of his nose. Now, it helps to have reference so you can see which way this is going. So I'm going to go in there and I start to apply all the different tones that are going to be needed to make this nose look realistic. So I see right around the nostril, it gets a little darker and so on. And then we have this little indent right there. So I'm going to add a little indent right to this little area right in there like that. And along the edges of the nose, about like that. And maybe a little darkening right along here. Now, keep in mind that it's a hard edge. We're going to fix all that later. And we're just going to add a couple of highlights now. So with my dodge tool, I'm going to add a little highlight to this edge. So I'm going to just add a little highlight right in there. Again, I got low exposure set, and this is just now the mid-tones. I'm going to just add a little highlight going right across the front part of the nostril there, and right on the tip of the nose right there, we'll add a little highlight. Maybe we might add a little streak right along that edge there. So now, let's add some more dark tones just along the bottom here. And maybe we'll switch to highlights, which is going to kind of give us some gray tones right in there. See, so we'll really darken the bottom part of the nose right through there like that. So now we're going to go in there and start to soften this up. I'm going to select an area of the nose with a feathered selection. I'm going to feather it at 6. The feather that you use is based on the resolution you're working at. 6 is quite a bit because I'm working at 72 dpi. So I'm going to select this edge of the nose right through here. And the reason I'm feathering it is so that where I stop the selection, it's going to be soft. And right in there, I'm going to go ahead and blur this. I'm going to give it a Gaussian blur, which right off the bat, soften that edge of the nose right there. So now you see that the nose is going to blend into the rest of the face. Now comes the nostril. Now, the nostril is not just a big hole like that. Look at your own nose or other people's noses. You'll see that there's skin going in there, and then there's a darkening in the area. Right? So let's get real close on the nostril and see what's going to happen here. So now, what's going to happen in this particular case is that I'm going to go into the nostril here, and I'm going to blur it just a little bit. So I'm going to apply that same filter from before, the Gaussian blur, but at a much lower rate. And make sure we're in the right layer. There it is, the nostril. I'm going to my blurs, and I'm going to bring it way down, bring it down to just about maybe 0.5, just to soften it a little bit. Right there. That's good enough. Pull back just a little. And now I'm going to give the nostril a mask. And the mask is where we're going to go in there and start to shape the nose. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to use a soft edge brush, bring it down in size, and I'm going to bring down the opacity down to about a 20%. And I'm using black because black is what's going to hide in the mask. And I start to very lightly paint along this edge right through here. Make the brush a little smaller and just kind of soften this up. I'm starting to paint, and you can see where I'm starting to just create this little shape of the inside of the nostril So it's not that big, giant crater that was there before. It's just a softening of these little areas. Now that I have that, I'll go back to the nostril itself, and I might want to darken certain parts. So I'll go in there and get this really small. I'm going to set this to shadows. So I'm going to affect all the dark tones. I'm going to really darken this top part right in there like that. Then I'm going to select this bottom part of the nostril right through there. There we go. And I'm going to blur that. I'm going to soften that up a little more, just about like that. And there you can see that as I pull back, it's going to start to look more like a real nose. Then we got this bottom part here. Well, we need to soften that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this little section right through here. Make sure I'm in the nose again. And I'll go into my softening and soften that up a little more. Just so I have a nice little softening of that little edge right in there of the nose. Click OK, and there we can see that we now have a realistic looking kind of a nose on the side of a very plain face right now.